In the news tonight, the Prime Minister receives Christian leaders to discuss preparations for the papal visit, and the Royal Court Chief inspects the media centre dedicated for international news coverage of the Pope's programme in Jordan. A video is released today by a human rights group showing two teenage Palestinians shot dead by Israeli forces during a protest last week. And Libya's parliament moves to a luxury hotel after being attacked by gunmen on Sunday, and Saudi Arabia closes down its embassy in Tripoli for security reasons. Good evening and welcome to a new edition of the news. Here are the details. As Jordan prepares to receive Pope Francis on Saturday in response to His Majesty the King's invitation, Prime Minister Abdullah Mansour received Christian representatives, including Latin Patriarch of the Holy Land and Jordan Fuad Atwal, Latin Bishop of Jordan Marun Laham, and Bishop Salim Sayef, to discuss preparations for the papal visit. Su said the visit reflects the deep ties between Jordan and the Vatican and affirms Jordan's image as a country of peace and religious tolerance. Patriarch Twal thanked the Jordanian government for its efforts in preparation for the visit and hailed the kingdom as a model of Muslim-Christian coexistence, while praising His Majesty the King's initiatives to promote dialogue and tolerance among peoples from different cultures and faiths. Royal Court Chief Faiz Al-Tarawni called on the media centre, where assigned media representatives will be stationed, and visited the Amman Stadium, where the Pope will hold a mass service expected to host thousands of worshippers. In the media centre at the Royal Cultural Centre, Tarawni checked on services offered to journalists, including technical support, as well as an administrative team to assist international media transmitting their news to televisions, radio stations and print media. The centre has also been equipped with a news conference hall and large TV screens that will broadcast live the Pope's activities during his visit. A news conference announcing the Pope's final visit scheduled to Jordan takes place tomorrow at the Royal Cultural Centre. Minister of State for Media Affairs and head of the Media Committee for the Pontiff's visit, Mohammed Al-Momani, as well as Minister of Labour, Tourism and Antiquities, Nidal Qatamin, and the official spokesman of the papal visit, Father Rifat Badr, will be speaking at the news conference.
Pope Francis' visit to Jordan in response to His Majesty the King's invitation is the fourth papal visit to the kingdom. On this occasion, the Media Committee for the Pope's visit launched a website featuring details of the Pontiff's historic trip to the kingdom. www.popevisit.jo offers live streaming video, high-resolution photo galleries, original videos, and background information on papal visits to the kingdom that began about 50 years ago. The website, available in Arabic, English and Spanish, offers online resources for journalists, multimedia professionals and the general public on the Pope's trip, starting with his arrival at Queen Alia International Airport and then to an official reception by Their Majesties King Abdullah and Queen Rania, and ending with a visit to the Jordan Valley baptismal site. At the Royal Palace, His Majesty and the Pope will deliver speeches before senior officials and guests before the Pontiff heads to the Amman International Stadium to celebrate Mass and then proceed to the baptismal site where he will meet refugees and people with special needs. The Pope's upcoming pilgrimage coincides with the 50th anniversary of the first papal trip to the kingdom and also marks 40 years of the Vatican's formation of a committee on relations with Islam and the Muslim world. The pilgrimage constitutes a further boost to efforts by the Pope and King Abdullah to enhance solidarity and mutual respect among religions, cultures and peoples, noting that the message of peace the two leaders hold is of extreme importance to the Middle East at this time of widespread injustice, sectarian conflict and extremism. The Media Committee, headed by State Minister for Media Affairs and Communications, Mohammed Al-Momani, comprises a host of official entities, including the Royal Court, the Prime Ministry, the Ministry of Tourism and Antiquities, the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and Expatriates Affairs, Jordan Television, Petra News Agency, the Jordan Tourism Board, the Baptism Site Commission, and the Amman Municipality. Hala Dababne for the news at 10.
Meanwhile, Father Rifat Badr announced that worshippers planning to attend the Pope's Mass service on Saturday at the Amman International Stadium are requested to obtain their entry tickets, available free of charge at various churches across the kingdom. I sat with Vatican Ambassador Giorgio Lingua this week and asked him about a host of issues pertaining to the Pope's visit to Jordan and the Holy Land. He voiced the Vatican's deep appreciation of Jordan's efforts to make the visit a successful one and spoke of Jordan as a true model of coexistence and tolerance. Here's an excerpt of the interview.
It's the 20th anniversary, also the diplomatic relationship between the Holy See and Jordan. Jordan is playing a very important role in this interfaith dialogue and harmony in the region. As you know, just a few days ago there was an important meeting between the Pontifical Council for Interreligious Dialogue, headed by Cardinal Jean-Louis Thoran, and the Royal Institute for Interfaith Studies, chaired by His Royal Highness Prince Al Hassan. This was the third colloquium they are doing, trying to focus on what are the main topics in today's society which need mutual understanding. This time was a focus on education. But it was not the only initiative that is going on between Jordan and the Vatican. Also with the Royal Al-Bayt Institute, chaired by His Royal Highness Prince Ghazi, being meetings both here in Jordan and in the Vatican. Next month of November there will be another one. And so this shows how much Jordan and the Vatican are working for bringing mutual understanding and interfaith dialogue.
The full interview will be aired on Jordan television within the next couple of days. In regional news, a video showing two teenage Palestinians shot dead by Israeli forces during a protest last week was released today. And the video released by a human rights group shows the teenagers had posed no danger as they were killed unlawfully. Muhammad Abu Dahir and Nadim Nawara were both shot in the heart during protests commemorating An-Nakba. Defense for Children International posted 2 minutes of video on YouTube, which it said was edited from fixed security cameras at a Palestinian-owned business that had filmed the scene. The Israeli military claimed that a preliminary investigation indicated that security personnel had fired rubber bullets and not live ammunition. It added that another investigation by military police was underway, but Palestinian officials called the killings a deliberate execution. Senior Palestinian official Hanan Ashrawi issued a statement saying that the use of excessive and indiscriminate violence constituted a war crime and called on world powers to hold Israel accountable for extrajudicial killings.
Watching the video and through our documentation, the final conclusion for us that neither of the children posed any threats to be deserved to get killed. This is one thing. Second thing, we noticed also that there were several hundreds meters far. The shot came from far. And what we as DCI, we ask upon the Israeli government to open impartial investigation and let the people and the world know about what happened exactly that day.
Syrian opposition activists said forces loyal to President Bashar al-Assad have dropped a chlorine bomb on the rebel-held village of Kfar, killing a teenager. This is the sixth alleged poison gas attack there in 2 months. The Syrian government denied that pro-Assad forces have used chlorine or other more poisonous gases and blamed all chemical attacks on rebel forces. The watchdog Organization for the Prevention of Chemical Weapons, OPCW, is considering launching its own fact-finding mission to investigate the reports of chlorine gas attacks. On the ground, meanwhile, Syrian armed forces have regained ground from rebels in the southern province of Daraa. Syria's state news agency said the army pursued armed rebels into the village of Nawa in Daraa, destroying their bases. Pictures released by the Syrian army showed heavy weapons and rocket launchers firing rockets. Military forces have taken hold or have retaken a chain of cities which form the north-south backbone of the country, which will help the state keep its grip on the Mediterranean coast to the west and restore control of the Lebanese border. On the fringes, however, rebels still pose a deadly challenge, holding parts of Aleppo and Daraa at the northern and southern tips of that backbone of Syrian cities. In response to World Health officials' suspicions that the human Middle East respiratory syndrome MERS may be linked with camels, Saudi camel owners denied any such possible link between livestock and the virus. MERS, a SARS-like viral disease first detected in 2012, has caused outbreaks in the Middle East and sporadic cases around the world and has raised international alarm with a surge in infections and deaths in Saudi Arabia. Since it was first identified, MERS has infected more than 500 patients in Saudi Arabia alone. The Saudi Health Ministry launched a widespread campaign using information posters and videos to educate its citizens how to identify and prevent the spread of the highly contagious disease. But camel owners in the Riyadh desert demonstrated their confidence in their animals by kissing them and drinking raw milk straight from their livestock. Libya's parliament moved to a luxury hotel until a powerful militia from the western city of Misrata is able to take up positions to protect its old building attacked by gunmen on Sunday. The attack was claimed by forces loyal to renegade General Khalifa Haftar, who said shelling the National Congress building was part of a campaign to purge the country of Islamists. Libya's election commission announced today it will hold parliamentary election on June 25th, bowing to pressure from Libyans frustrated over the country's chaotic transition. Meanwhile, and due to security concerns, Saudi Arabia closed its embassy and consulate in the capital and withdrew all of its diplomatic staff. Algeria had already closed its embassy in Tripoli and declared the maximum state of emergency on the border with Libya. Security in Libya has deteriorated, and at least 8 foreign diplomats have been abducted in the country this year by militants seeking to exchange hostages for fighters detained overseas. Iran's President Hassan Rouhani says the country should embrace the internet rather than see it as a threat, in remarks that challenge hardliners who have recently stepped up pressures to censor the web. Trying to win the battle for public influence by restricting the internet, he says, is like bringing a wooden sword to a gunfight. His remarks are seen as his most forceful signal yet of a break with the social media policy of predecessor Mahmoud Ahmadinejad, who rounded up bloggers and tightened online controls, especially after protesters used social media to organize mass street demonstrations in 2009. We ought to see the internet as an opportunity and recognize our citizens' right to connect to the web, Rouhani was quoted saying by the official news agency. Serbia declared 3 days of national mourning and reported another death in the worst rainfall to hit the Balkan region. The rising river Sava threatens more havoc. On Serbia's border with Bosnia, an entire hill is threatening to slide into the river Adrina and flood the town. The government in Bosnia says more than 1 million people, or a quarter of the population, have been affected by the flooding and landslides, comparing the destruction to that of the country's 1992 to 1995 war. We get more in this report.
A deadly calm in a nearly deserted town in Serbia. The government has declared 3 days of national mourning, with more than 40 killed as the region was hit by the worst rainfall in living memory. In this town alone, 14 people died. Now the military is moving in, patrolling waterlogged streets. Rescue workers make efforts to salvage what has been left behind in what has virtually become a ghost town. Many people have been evacuated from their homes. Some residents decided to stick it out.
They were driving like crazy in the streets, beeping their horns and shouting, "Evacuation, evacuation, get out, get out. You have to get out, evacuation, evacuation." I know all of that, but I live on the 4th floor, and where would I go?
In Bosnia, cleanup efforts are underway. On the street, damaged cars. And lifetimes of memories, with residents saying it is even worse than 2 decades ago when they were hit by war. This woman was a refugee during the war. She was able to put her life back together before. Now all that she had is destroyed.
We're just trying to save our minds because we had the war and now this happened to us. All I had is outside now. I can't use anything.
As floodwaters recede, new fears emerge. Authorities now warn of landmines left over from the war that could have been dislodged by the flooding.
Ukrainian border guards said Russian military activity near the border has decreased and that no Russian troops have been seen within 10 kilometers of the border. The Kremlin said yesterday President Vladimir Putin ordered Russian forces near Ukraine back to their bases, but NATO and the United States said they saw no sign of a pullback. Ukraine holds a presidential election next Sunday that Western countries consider a crucial event in resolving the country's crisis. But the election faces disruption in eastern regions of the former Soviet Republic, where pro-Russian separatists have seized strategic points in several cities. The United States and the EU have threatened to ramp up sanctions on Moscow if it interferes in the votes. Internationally renowned Peruvian tenor Juan Diego Flores is bringing music to the most impoverished children of Peru, from the slums of Lima to struggling villages high up in the mountains. Flores has established the Symphony for Peru Foundation, which supports the creation of children and youth orchestras and choirs around the South American country. The project focuses on impoverished communities and aims to transform society through music, instilling values in children to keep them away from a life of drugs and crime. The opera singer said the goal of his foundation was to fill the lives of children with opportunities and ignite their creativity. Brazil's preparations to host the upcoming World Cup suffered yet another setback when heavy rain in Manaus has brought the roof down at the city's airport. Parts of the arrivals and departure lounges were flooded, while the car parks and other areas were also swamped by the heavy rains. According to local media, the Manaus airport renovations were inspected last month and flaws and defects were detected in the construction. England will open up the World Cup campaign against Italy in Manaus on June 14. Lionel Messi wants to change the Barcelona chip in his head to an Argentina one to do well at the World Cup. Speaking to reporters upon his arrival in Buenos Aires, Messi said he would try to put a disappointing season in Spain behind him after Barcelona failed to win a major trophy for the first time in 6 years. While Messi suffered hamstring problems and had a drop in form from the high standards he set in previous seasons, he hopes to be back to his clinical best to lead Argentina to a third world title in Brazil. Argentina plays in Group F against Bosnia, Iran, and Nigeria. And finally, cool tonight in most regions and fair elsewhere with westerly light winds. Tomorrow, a slight rise in temperature is expected, creating relatively hot conditions across the hilly areas and hot in the Jordan Valley. Winds will be westerly, changing to northwesterly fresh and blowing dust in the south. The Gulf of Aqaba should no doubt expect very hot conditions with southwesterly brisk winds and slightly choppy seas. Here now is a look at temperatures forecast for tonight and tomorrow. And to close, here's a reminder of the day's top stories. The Prime Minister receives Christian leaders to discuss preparations for the papal visit, and the Royal Court Chief inspects a media center dedicated for international news coverage of the Pope's program in Jordan. A video is released today by a human rights group showing 2 teenage Palestinians shot dead by Israeli forces during a protest last week. And Libya's parliament moves to a luxury hotel after being attacked by gunmen on Sunday, and Saudi Arabia closes down its embassy in Tripoli for security reasons. And with this, we come to the end of this edition of the news. I'm Alia Tuqan. Thank you for joining us and have a good night.